Good evening all and welcome. I've got a thrilling week ahead for you. A whole host of cryptid stories all this week. And tonight we're going to be starting off with UFO and alien stories. I also would like to wish a very, very happy birthday to Christy T. Wishing you the most wonderful day. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I was 15. Almost 16, and that summer in Tacoma was suffocating. My parents didn't have the luxury of air conditioning, so we'd camp out in the backyard to escape the heat. That night, like many others, I was on the trampoline with my cousins Dan and Chris. Dan was 9, Chris 14. We had a system. Hide a few cans of Surge in our sleeping bags, raid my dad's garden for snap peas and carrots, and lie back to count shooting stars until we passed out. I had my flashlight beside me. It was tucked between me and Chris. The sky was perfectly wide, open, and clear. We were laughing, whispering, and trying to stay awake when something changed. A massive shape was hovering above us. It was unmoving and silent at first, oval, maybe flattened, with a concave scoop in the front. It looked as big as the moon, but it wasn't in space. It was hovering maybe 500 feet above the treetops. It didn't have lights, at least not in the usual sense. The whole surface glowed with a dull, red-orange hue, steady, not pulsing like hot red metal, smooth overall with darker patches scattered along the underside. I remember staring at those spots, wondering if they were windows, portholes, or viewpoints. Maybe someone was watching me from inside. Dan panicked. He began crying, stumbling over Chris, accidentally kneeing him in the groin, and grabbed the flashlight. Chris groaned and curled up while Dan flicked on the light and pointed it directly at the object. "Turn it off!" I yelled, my heart stammering. I grabbed the flashlight but couldn't get it to shut off. My fingers weren't working. So I shoved it in my sleeping bag and looked up, bracing for a reaction. But the object didn't react. It didn't change direction. It didn't speed up. It just kept drifting southeast, silent and impossibly smooth, until it slipped past the treetops and vanished from view. We jumped off the trampoline and ran to the edge of the yard to see where it had gone. But it was gone, and then nothing. That's what gets me the most. I have no memory of what happened next, not a single moment. It's like the night stopped there. I don't remember if we talked, panicked, or fell asleep. If you guys have ever taken anesthetic, you'll probably know what it's like. 1 minute you're conscious talking and suddenly you're just gone. Well, that's what it was like. The next thing I recall is waking up the next morning, sun in my eyes. We never talked about it. Not that day, not ever. And after that summer, everything changed. Their parents divorced, Dan and Chris fell into hard times, drugs, arrests, juvenile detention, and we drifted apart, and I haven't seen them since. But I wish I could ask them if they remember. I wish I could hear their reaction, because I remember it vividly. That night changed me. I became a photographer. Mostly nights, mostly skies, and I've taken thousands of shots of stars, satellites, and clouds lit by moonlight. But in nearly 30 years, I've never seen anything I couldn't explain out in the sky. And I wonder if I'll get to see whatever the hell that thing was again. This happened when I was a kid in the mid-80s. And I saw something that has stuck with me for my entire life. So picture me on a winter night, cold and still. I was sitting in the snowbank beside our house, staring up at the stars, which is something I usually did. There was no wind, no cars, and no planes. That's when I noticed something bizarre. The stars started disappearing. Not fading, but whole patches of sky began to go dark. At first I thought clouds were moving in, but the edges were too sharp and straight. That's when I realized I was looking at a massive triangular craft gliding just above the treetops. It had no lights, no sound, nothing. Just this huge, pitch-black shape, drifting slowly against the wind. The only reason I could see it at all was because it blocked the stars above it. It moved with an unnatural smoothness, like it wasn't flying, but sliding through the air. The thing was enormous, easily as big as my whole neighborhood. As it passed overhead, I could make out faint reflections along its leading edge, like brushed metal, catching a bit of ambient light from the houses below. The air made me feel strange too, like there had been a change in pressure. I sat there frozen, watching it silently drift towards the mountains in the distance. Just before it disappeared over the tree line, I felt, or maybe heard, a low vibration in my chest. Not a sound, more like a sub-bass hum. You feel more than you can hear. Then suddenly everything went normal again. The stars reappeared and the pressure eased. And moments later my mother called me in for dinner. I never told her what I saw. I don't think anyone else had noticed it that night, but even after all these years, I can't shake how large it was. I know it wasn't a plane or a blimp, or anything I've ever seen since. But I have learned that triangle silent craft sightings were reported by others around that same period, the so-called Black Triangle Wave. But back then, obviously, I'd never heard about it. I was a kid just sitting in the snow, watching the stars vanish behind something that should have been impossible. This is a story that my dad shared with me, and it still frightens me to this day. For context, he was sitting outside around midnight, in a patio chair on the edge of his property. His little house sits near a river, with dense woods stretching out behind it. That night was perfectly still, no wind, no clouds, and the tree line looked like a solid wall of black under the starry sky. He said he was there smoking a cigarette and looking up at the stars when suddenly an intense light streaked down from the sky at an angle. He didn't notice it at first, not until it cleared the roof overhanging behind him. He described it as a miniature comet, a bright, baseball-sized orb glowing a brilliant white with a tail about a foot long. The tail was pure white near the orb and faded to a yellowish glow at the tip. It moved unnaturally fast but completely silent. In less than a second, it slammed into the ground right in front of him, then surprisingly vanished, with no noise, no flash or no burn mark, just a blinding streak of light that disappeared the moment it touched the earth. He was so startled that he used his lighter to check the ground where it had landed, but he couldn't see anything, just the same dark blacktop driveway and the wall of trees behind it. But he swears he felt like something was out there. The next morning, though, the spot was different. He found a faint, shimmering spiral on the blacktop, like a snail trail but thinner, as if it were glowing faintly under the sun. It was about the same size as the glowing orb, and stayed there for a few days before fading completely. I don't know what it could have been, but my dad swears every word of it is true. And I've seen strange things as well. One afternoon I watched around 20 tic-tac shaped objects drift above me high in the woods. They moved like amoebas under a microscope, smooth, liquid-like motions weaving silently around each other. And after a few seconds they simply faded out like they were never there. No one believes either of us, and honestly I don't blame them, but there was something about seeing things you can't explain, especially when they happen near the woods, that makes the world feel a lot less empty. A few nights ago, something genuinely strange happened to me while I was traveling near the Samarkand and Tajikistan border in Uzbekistan. I wanted to share it because it's been stuck in my mind ever since, and I'm curious if anyone else, especially people from Uzbekistan or Tajikistan or other Silk Road travelers, have ever experienced anything remotely like it. So this happened between 2 and 4 a.m. in the middle of the night. My friends and I were walking along an isolated square-shaped road loop not far from the Uzbekistan-Tajikistan border. It's frequented by travelers during the day, but is completely deserted at night, surrounded by open fields and patches of grass. We're both foreign medical students studying in Uzbekistan, and we decided to take a late-night walk since the weather was calm and cool. While walking along the road, we noticed something that already feels a bit off. There were around 5 to 10 parked cars and vans scattered along the empty road. They weren't lined up or parked together, just randomly positioned here and there. There were no houses nearby, no shops, and no visible people anywhere. Just this strange collection of parked vehicles sitting in the silence under the dim light of the sky. At the far end of the road, there was only one cow grazing quietly on a grassy patch. That was the only living thing around. The whole scene already felt weird, with no sound, no wind, and no movement except from the cow. But then the really strange part began. As we continued walking, we both noticed a bright, blinking light appear roughly 10 to 20 meters ahead of us, floating just about 1 meter above the ground, around the height of someone's knee. At first, it looked like a single bright, white light, blinking at a steady pace. Then within seconds, it split into 3 equally spaced points, forming a perfect triangle shape. The light started with a move slowly in a straight, horizontal line ahead of us, as if they were gliding together. The movement was so smooth, almost at the same speed someone might walk, but completely silent. There was no color change, no flicker other than the steady blinking pattern, and definitely no sound at all. We both stood there, frozen, watching these 3 lights drift along the road. They stayed visible for about 10 seconds, moving smoothly, while blinking at the same rhythm, and then, in an instant, they vanished. Not faded away, they were just gone. My friend and I both saw it clearly and described the exact same thing to each other right after. So it wasn't some personal illusion, camera trick, or atmospheric reflection. Whatever it was physically there, just a few meters in front of us. After it disappeared, the silence around us felt even heavier than before. Those parked vehicles around us suddenly felt even more out of place. We couldn't see anyone inside them or around them. No lights, no movement or anything. Later, when we got back, I started looking online for anything that could explain what we saw. That's when I came across Central Asian folklore, mentioning spirit lights and glowing entities, and sometimes appearing along the old Silk Road trade routes. According to a few sources, travelers used to tell stories of glowing lights appearing in the night in isolated areas, sometimes a single orb, sometimes multiple, forming shapes. And these lights were believed to be spirits or energy manifestations connected to the ancient roots. Some versions of folklore say they appear to guide travelers, while others claim they're trickster spirits that lure wanderers away from safety. I don't know what to make of what we saw. Maybe it was some kind of rare atmospheric or electrical phenomena. Maybe something man-made that we couldn't identify. Or maybe something older that was tied to the Silk Road legends. Either way, that image of 3 perfectly aligned blinking lights floating just above the ground and moving quietly through an empty border road is burned in my memory. If anyone has ever experienced it or knows more about them, I'd love to hear it. Throughout my life, I have seen lights in the sky that I always say are UFOs. I've seen satellites, planes and drones, and can tell the difference between them to know that what I have seen are none of these. One winter, a long time ago, there was a period of about a month where I would see lights and objects in the sky every week that were unidentifiable. My most recent sighting was outside my bedroom window. I live in a little town about 2 hours away from Toronto. My neighborhood is the last bit of building you see before it turns to almost endless fields and open sky. I was sitting at my desk working on one of my novels. My desk is right next to my window, and I keep my curtains open because I'm on the second floor and don't care to close them often. Around midnight, I turn off my laptop to go to bed, and as I get up from my chair, I turn to look out my window as I switch my lamp off. I still have a lamp on by my bed, but now because there's no light by my window, I can look out and clearly see this big red light sitting there in the space in the sky to the right of my next door neighbor's house. It didn't occur to me at first that it was a UFO. I thought it was a plane. But as I'm watching it, I realize it isn't moving. It appears to be stationary. There aren't any blinking lights, just one big red light sitting in the sky. An important thing to note is yes, we do have a radio tower, but it's about a mile in the opposite direction, nowhere near my house, and there were no other towers close by that I could have mistaken this for. So since this is the first time I've been able to observe something like this for longer than 15 seconds, I made the decision to go down to my car to get my binoculars. As I come down and go outside, I can still see it there, sitting in the sky, but now that I'm outside, I can see it way better. I put the binoculars up to my face and try to get the light in my sights. As I look through the glass, I can barely make out a thing shaped like a diamond. There was no sound or movement. It was stationary in the same spot for well over 20 minutes. That's how long I watched it anyway, before I got too tired to watch it any longer and went inside to go to bed. I began my nighttime routine, and when I finally was ready to go to bed, I peeked out, and it was still there. It must have been at least an hour. Long after I went to bed too, but it wasn't there when I woke up, and it wasn't there when the sky got dark either. I just wonder what the hell it was I saw. My mum is very religious and no nonsense. She grew up Brethren, which is basically an older form of baptism, which doesn't really exist anymore. Despite her upbringing, she has always been interested in aliens. I think it's because her dad had an obsession with them, but I don't know why. Maybe he saw something during his trucking and military days. As a kid, I always caught my mum watching those alien and UFO shows. She really wanted to see a UFO for herself. One night, she was traveling down the Appalachian Mountains in western North Carolina, coming from a festival in eastern Tennessee. It was fall, so the leaves were beginning to become bare, and you could see through them. She was driving along with my sister and my grandmother when she saw what looked like 3 to 5 lights in a circular shape. It's getting really close. My sister and grandmother notice it too. Soon it appears to be behind them, very low to the ground, and my mum opens the sunroof and window, but there is no sound coming at all coming from wherever it is. Then something my mum describes as an opaque white column comes down the road behind her car, and it's following. Like the distance between the white column and the car doesn't change. My mum went from curious to freaked and guns it. I think the total time it followed was probably less than a minute. Eventually, it went away without a trace. When my mum finally got home that night and told me about it, I thought she would be excited, but it nearly scared her to death. She said she'd always wanted to see a UFO, but that experience left her terrified. I remember she complained about being unable to sleep for the next few nights. This was at least 10 years ago, but still, she doesn't seem to talk about the aliens with such frequency anymore. It so happened that she knew of a friend who lived around where she saw it. She called him up, and sure enough, the camera on his garage actually caught the lights on film from that night. Not to mention, it was on the local Johnson City TN News because multiple people saw the lights from a distance. But, given the amount of time passed, I was unable to find the report. When I was a kid in rural Louisiana, one late afternoon, me, my sister and my mum were going to church. This was in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. In rural North Louisiana, There are massive fields that grow anything from cotton to cattle to soybeans, and as we took a turn around some trees to our left is this pretty big fiery thing hovering over a field. And when I say fiery, it was because it was red and orange and bright like a fire, but it was shaped kind of like the flame on a lighter, long and pointed at the top and bottom. Us kids started screaming, saying it was the return of Jesus, which I find so funny now because I'm not religious. My mother, for some odd reason, tells us it's just a rocket, which is absolutely insane to think, because there are no rockets or space shuttles taking off in rural North Louisiana. But we were kids, so what did we know? We observe it just floating there silently until it's out of sight. I couldn't tell you if it was moving very slowly or standing still, because we were in a moving car. But if it was moving, it was slow. I thought nothing of it, and for decades just kind of forgot about it until I happened to see an interview or documentary about that Bob Laser guy who claimed he worked on UFOs. One of the things he claimed was that some flying discs turn upwards to travel at certain speed, with the points up and down. That made me remember what we saw. Here's where things get odd. Shortly after that, I started having night terrors, a fear of being in my room alone at night, and was regularly sleepwalking. It got really bad, as I would start waking up in different areas of the house, waking up outside even. On one occasion, I woke up in a completely black room with no light in what I assume was a room in my house. I had no idea. That incident in particular was terrifying and disorienting, and I had to feel around to find a way to hopefully get out from wherever I was. I ended up blacking out, suddenly. No idea where I'd been or how I got there. So there have been a few missing time incidents as well. I also started having really serious nosebleeds, almost daily, and it wasn't uncommon to wake up in the middle of the night with blood all over my pillow and face. The nosebleeds got so bad I had to see a doctor. Also, I have never really discussed this with anyone. I started getting these night visits from someone or something I used to call the White Triangle Lady. I got the feeling she wanted me to do something or go somewhere with her, and was asking if I wanted to accept. I also got the feeling she was trying to recruit me or ask if I wanted to be a part of something or continue something. I should also add these experiences did not feel like any dream state I had ever experienced at the time or have since experienced. I would need more time to try and explain how it all felt. She came many times and spoke, not with words, but images, emotions, and energy, even movement. It's hard to describe because I was so young and interacting with her was absolutely overwhelming and intense, almost psychedelic. But motherly too. I can't emphasize how abstract it was. It's honestly a bit hard to describe. But all the same, it was bizarre. This happened in Odessa, Texas. I noticed 2 stars that were odd. Odd because, as time was passing, they were in the exact same position in the sky, and the sun was slowly setting, so if they were stars, it would also move position since the Earth rotates. So I took a look with binoculars and then a telescope. It looked like an actual star to compare. An actual star just looked like a shiny dot. These other 2 stars had 3 dots each in the form of a triangle. Not shiny, just 3 dots of light, but because of their distance without a telescope, you'd only see a dot of light. It didn't move at all, and both UFOs just faded slowly. Between 1 to 7 days after the 3 dots event, around 3 to 3:30 a.m., something was hovering over our house. I was asleep. My brother knocked on my door, waking me up, telling me something was above the house. My brother saw this light that lit the whole backyard, and he also felt pressure and bass. My mother woke up from the feeling and seeing the same thing. She had work that day. So if she's up at, let's say, 3 to 3:30 a.m., then something happened for sure. She also caught part of a big round shadow cast upon the backyard fence. Because if the moon is out and something big is hovering over the house, the UFO will cast a shadow. and then it started to move. That's when the light, base, and air pressure shut off. After that, they both told me what happened, maybe 10 to 15 minutes later, and I went back to sleep, which to be honest I think is a bit out of character for me to do. I'm already nocturnal as it is. I just got told by my family a UFO was above the house, and I go back to sleep a few minutes later, I guess. No airplanes or helicopters were scheduled to fly above that airspace at that time. We called to confirm, and when I woke back up again in the morning, I had what looked like 3 needle shots in the form of a triangle on my right hand, in the middle finger and knuckle, like small round scabs that were perfectly clean. It went away after about a week, but for about 5 years after that, whenever hot water would touch that area of my hand, it would sting for a moment. Years later, the feeling went away. Now I also want to say this. I've had experiences that would not be a UFO experience, although maybe alien related as well. This was in Houston. One time I heard a very clear voice only on the right side of my ear say the word, "Hey," but it was kind of loud and growing louder like a whisper. At first I thought maybe it was the TV because it was just weird, but the TV was off. Nothing else could make that sound, only in my right ear anyway. Another example is when I went tubing with my brother in New Braunfels, Texas. While we were tubing, my mother and grandfather were back at the hotel, and my grandfather received a picture in the color sepia of what looked like me around a rapid water on some kind of submerged square platform, on my knees looking up at the camera. It was an aerial shot, maybe a few yards up. But how my grandfather received the picture was different. It covered his whole phone screen, which means it was not a text message or airdrop, and once he saw it, a few minutes later my mother wanted to see it and the picture was nowhere to be found. I thought it was interesting that the whole picture was also in sepia. I've also had other experiences, such as this, which appear to be what some may call paranormal, but maybe it could be alien related. In the end, who knows? Go back to when I was 6 years old. The year was 2015, in Thailand, roughly at 11 p.m. My grandma and I were watching TV about the Northern Lights. I wasn't paying much attention as I was playing with my toys, when suddenly there was a bright blue light coming down from the sky outside my window, over the road beside my house. I was shocked and called my grandma over to look, and she saw it too. I told her to record it using her phone, but being a grandma, she was struggling to get the phone to record the phenomena. While it was happening, I discussed with her that there was no way it could be the Northern Lights as we were in Thailand, and it couldn't be car lights either, as the light was coming from the sky. The light appeared as a bright, translucent strip, like the Northern Lights but blue, and it reached all the way to the ground. It was stunning. Suddenly a car drove into it, and nothing happened, like the light wasn't there at all. The light stayed for about 5 minutes before retracting back into the sky, leaving me in shock. The next day I told this story to my family members, but they all said I was hallucinating, considering I was just 6 years old. I've been puzzled ever since about what really happened. My grandma has already forgotten about it. I want to know your opinions, if anyone has experienced anything similar. I was homeless in Washington State from 96 to 04. About a year before I got off the streets, my friend Michael, who had known me for a long time, tried to help me out. I needed a safe spot to set up my tent, and he knew a family with their own property in Arlington, Washington. Somehow, he convinced them to let me stay there. The grandfather came to pick me up and took me to their place. When I got inside, I met the family. There was the elderly wife and 2 daughters. One daughter was a little kid, probably around 8 or 9, and the other a teenager. I gave the girl a Scooby-Doo shirt I had, because she said she liked Scooby-Doo. I didn't think much of it, I mean, why would I? But apparently they found it strange that I did that. The whole time I was there, they didn't say anything to me. I stayed on a few weeks and rarely went inside, only when I was invited in. Anyway, on the first night there, I was chatting with the grandma and noticed her husband was missing. I asked her where he was, and she bluntly said, "He went for a walk to meet the UFO." I was like, "What?" She said it happened regularly. At first I didn't know what to think, and as time passed I learnt that the little girl was having night terrors and claimed that little grey men were standing at the foot of her bed at night. One day, while I was in the house talking to Grandpa, I mentioned how his wife told me that on the night I arrived he went out for a walk to meet the UFO. He told me he worked for an aerospace company and had some inside info. Then he turned on the TV in the living room and changed the channel. I saw the Lockheed Martin logo in the bottom left corner and a rotating wireframe diagram of an aircraft that looked like the SR-71. He said it was a channel that only employees could access. I'm not really sure why he decided to show me that. One night I suddenly felt really unwell. I was hit with nausea, dizziness and a headache, so I headed to my tent to rest and ended up sleeping for a bit. I finally woke up around 4 or 5 in the morning. I was lying on my stomach in my tent, which was around the corner from their back porch, and I heard what sounded like little people running past my tent to the left and up the back deck of the house. I didn't look out, because I wasn't feeling too well. Not long after that, they asked me to leave. A couple of years later, I ran into Michael at a church dinner for the homeless and brought up the weird situation. He told me that those people accused me of paying too much attention to the little girl, and that's why I was asked to leave. I was super upset, because it seemed like they were insinuating that I was a pedophile. If they really thought that was true, why didn't they talk to me about it, or to the person who picked me up? Why did I have to find out about it about years later? It seemed to me like they were just trying to find an excuse to kick me out because I knew too much. I obviously denied the accusation because who wouldn't? I told Michael they were lying about me, and then he got mad at me for disrespecting people he thought of as family. I think I said something like, "Screw those people," and after that Michael and I didn't talk for years. But I wonder, did I hear or see too much? Did they let on a bit more than they should have, and confide in me because I was homeless? I guess I'll never know. I am located in Akron, Ohio, USA, and this happened in 2022. I had just gotten home from working late one night. I used to test gas stations and would work late into the night most times, and I got home around 2:45 a.m., let my dogs out to use the bathroom, and when I was standing there I got the overwhelming sensation to peek around the corner of my house towards my neighbors. So I just barely peeked around the side of my house and looked into their backyard and saw something that truly freaked me out. Like the worst feeling I've ever experienced to date. So for context, it was late into the night, and a dark night, maybe a crescent moon or even a new moon. Either way, it was dark outside. So I had stepped back out with my dogs to get my stuff out of my work truck, and while they did their business, I set my stuff aside in the side door of my house and walked back outside to them. After they finished up, I let them back inside, but before I could follow them, I got such an overwhelming feeling that I had to look around the corner of my house to my neighbors. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to do so. I barely peeked my head around and saw this creature standing inside my neighbor's fenced-in backyard. It was standing at the back of the yard facing towards the woods behind our house, so it had its back towards my neighbor's house, and I was looking at its side profile. It stood maybe 7 feet tall, with pale white skin, but was bright like a light was shining on it. But again, it was pitch black outside. Yet I could see it perfectly. It was so human-like, except it had no clothes on and was muscular but smooth. I could see from head to toe. It had no genitalia, just that smooth body, staring straight into the woods. As I was staring at this in absolute disbelief and shock, while still hiding behind my house essentially. It snapped its head towards me and stared directly at me. I didn't get any thoughts in my head besides, run. In a full panic, I ran inside my house, slammed the door behind me and locked it, just waiting for whatever this creature was to come and get me. I have never felt fear like I did in that moment. I truly thought it would come get me, or take me, or kill me. I have never seen anything like that before or since. In summary, it was 6 to 7 feet tall, with bright pale white skin, completely naked, and stood staring into the woods inside the fenced backyard at the edge, and did not make any movements beside to snap its face towards me. The closest thing I can find online is the creature from Prometheus, but it's still not all the same. If anyone has any ideas on what this could be, I'm all ears. When I was a child, I started to become interested in supernaturalism and things like ghosts and aliens. It began because I used to see shadow people and spirits as a child, so I was pretty open-minded towards many things. When I was about 10, my father noticed I was taking an interest and took my brother and I into the kitchen. He said, "I need to tell you guys something, and you have to promise you won't tell anyone else." Keep in mind, this was during a time when people were less open about these things, whereas now, he feels more open about sharing because it seems to be a more popular topic nowadays. He told me that when he was 6 years old, he grew up in Ontario, he got up in the middle of the night to use the washroom. He said that something caught the corner of his eye, and he looked and saw 3 short beings at the bottom of his short stairwell, about 5 or 6 stairs from the bedroom to the living room. He described them as a translucent greenish color, with big black eyes and large heads. He said the one in the middle had some kind of vest on that gave him the impression he was the leader or in charge or something like that. He said he kept hearing a voice in his mind that he described was neither male or female, and it just kept repeating the words, "We are not here to harm you." He said he heard it in the area between his eyes, the third eye area, and that it was the clearest he's ever heard a voice in his life. My dad said he actually wasn't really scared but more excited, and he asked them if he'd ever see them again. He said he was communicating with them in his mind and not out loud. They said to him, "We will let ourselves be known." He said there was a flash of light, and they vanished into a single cube, and then the cube got smaller until it vanished, and they were gone. Now, as a 10-year-old, this story amazed me. Of course I believed my father. I once told it at a birthday party when I was 12, only to be told that my father was delusional, and I didn't share it again until I was older. But I was always that weird kid that told paranormal stories. It hurt my feelings though when they said my dad was delusional, because he is one of the sanest and most grounded people in my life. The thing is, both my uncles and his mum also witnessed them. His youngest brother told me that he woke up and saw them through the crack of his door, as his bedroom door was slightly open, as my dad and brothers shared the same room. He said he was scared and hid under the covers. My eldest uncle also woke up and was at the entrance of the bedroom watching it all. When my dad woke up and told his mum, my grandmother, she said that they were in her bedroom at the foot of her bed and that she had seen them before. My dad and his brothers were in shock the next morning and apparently ate their cereal at the table without a word. My eldest uncle was telling my dad that morning that there was some kind of craft over the neighbor's house, but my dad didn't bother to look because he was still trying to process the events from the night before. I confirmed this story with both my uncles. I wonder how much they visited that home, because I remember my grandparents had a unique energy. My grandmother used to say it was a holy house. She was religious. A lot of strange and paranormal things have happened in my family, including to myself. I'm in a chapter of my life now where I always want to share some of these stories. Maybe I'll keep sharing them here. Anyway, call it what you want, but I always believe my family. How could he be delusional when 3 other family members saw it? And I figured it would be cool to share now, seeing how so many people are interested in aliens these days. Back in August of 23, we were staying at an Airbnb in Hatch, Utah. This place didn't have any air conditioning considering the elevation of Hatch, and the temperature was pretty comfortable. On the first night, my wife and I were out stargazing, since the sky was devoid of light pollution and clouds. I had my GoPro set up and my phone taking photos, so we were just staring up enjoying the stars. That's when my wife pointed out to me what appeared to be a single, small satellite that was floating across the sky. As we were looking at it, however, it multiplied into 3 lights in a triangle shape. It continued to expand in the same manner until there were around 7 lights in a larger triangle pattern. That, in of itself, is pretty weird. But what really was just bizarre was the sky that was visible within that triangle shape more or less froze like a screenshot, and then that section of sky was moving with the triangle while the rest of the sky around it was stationary. The best way I can describe it would be like in the movie Predator and his active camo invisibility tech. The world behind him was visible, but skewed. This triangle passed over the sky for a few short minutes until it just seemed to either rise rapidly or disappear or shrink rapidly. It was about that time that we noticed it had gone eerily silent outside with us, with no crickets or anything. Even the wind seemed to stop. We decided to go in for the night after that, as we were both pretty weirded out. In awe, but weirded out. I got some good pictures of the night sky, but of course, as usual, they didn't see anything weird. A few hours later, the same evening when we were getting ready for bed, I wanted to try a long exposure setting that I had found on my GoPro. So I was standing on the porch taking pictures, and that's when I heard the whistle. Now, I'm not an overly superstitious man, but I've heard stories, and not wanting to take my chances, I didn't return the whistle. There was a second whistle shortly after the first that expedited my decision to go back inside. Weirded out, we laughed it off and locked the doors and went back to bed. Mind you, that due to the lack of air conditioning in the house, the windows were still open for airflow. An hour or so later, after we were asleep, my wife woke me up to ask if I had heard that. It was at this point we both heard a very deep growl and breathing like that of a bear or large animal outside our window on the porch. Not loudly, but bassy. We could hear heavy footsteps on the porch as well. We woke our friends up and turned all the lights on to look around. There were no footprints on the dusty porch, and none in the soft mud around the porch, so this experience we just cannot explain. Of course, our friends were asleep in their room and didn't hear a thing, and they didn't experience the early sightings outside either. Nothing else weird happened while we stayed there for the rest of the trip. The final thing to have happened, and this is the part that really weirded my wife out, was that a month or so later when we were back home, we were in the kitchen making dinner when she looked up and there was an owl sitting on the fence just staring into the house at us. I wasn't at the time aware of the correlation between alien sightings/abductions and the sighting of owls, but I am now. To our knowledge, we didn't have any lost time events or anything like that, but it just kind of felt weird that we saw something we weren't supposed to see, and they were checking out to see if we were cool. For my wife, this was a little too much, and it has made her uneasy to stare at the stars much anymore. I, on the other hand, am still very much intrigued. I haven't noticed any more owls as of late, so I don't know if it was a coincidence or not. The following happened on the 11th of July 2019. Me and my then boyfriend, now husband, were camping in the mountains very high up. Now this area is so high up and remote that there is virtually no light pollution, so you can see nearly every star in the sky when it's a clear night, like this one was. We were just relaxing, staring at the stars, usually romantic things you do in the mountains, when we started noticing the stars acting differently. They appeared to zigzag and go upwards and almost play with one another, weaving near each other and away again in circular motions. We were just amazed by it all and couldn't take our eyes off the sky. This went on for a solid 2 to 3 hours. That wasn't the strangest part though. Where we were camping, there was a clear view of an opening between two other mountains. At around 2, maybe 3 a.m., I noticed this bright, very bright light between those mountains, so I nudged my partner to look over too. We were staring at this massive, white-yellow looking star going upwards and quickly noticed it going towards us. My partner is a man that isn't easily scared, and this really scared him to the point he nearly broke my nose trying to hide fully in the tent, with both of us screaming as this star just stopped right above us. When it was above us, right before we both panicked, it seemed to have a diamond-type shape and was super bright. But that isn't the strangest part. When we were in the tent, note the light didn't shine through the tent, this thing didn't make a single noise. So, no, it wasn't a drone or anything like that, it was far too large. And what seemed like moments later, we were both so calm looking at the stars again like nothing happened until sunrise. If both of us didn't experience this, if it was just one of us, I could try and make an excuse for it. But I can't. I can't explain it. And to top it all off, when I'm talking about it, or in this case typing, it feels like I'm lying and my partner feels the same way. Like it never happened. Like I'm making it up. And the more I try and remember about the night, the more we can't remember. Do you get me? Does anyone else have any experience like anything like this? Or some answers? Some years ago, I was in my studio apartment in Miami, Florida, about 2015, and I was trying to sleep as I had work the next day. I wasn't tired, more just forcing myself. When I was a kid, I would sleep with the covers over my head for comfort, but as an adult I've stopped this. Anyway, on this particular night, I had the covers over my head for 15 minutes to try and sleep, but was still wide awake, and after about 15 minutes, I had this feeling like something was behind me. It wasn't physical, it was a mental intuition. I took the covers off, turned my head, and boom, about 6 inches from my face is this bluish translucent figure creeping over me. Its head near my head, it had 6 white eyes and no pupils, and the head shape was not normal. I can't remember what it was though. After about 1.5 seconds of me staring at it, it changes its shape and becomes me, or what I think looked like me, but bald and with still this bluish, transparent nature. I told my girlfriend the other day that it looked like Silver Surfer. I get up, and as soon as I start movement, the thing shifts towards the hallway, so I run after it. It looks behind it while it runs, and boom, it vanishes or disperses through the door. I've never seen anything like it, and after that experience, something weird did happen that was similar but not like that. Keep in mind I wasn't scared at all, but I was intrigued and wanted to know why it was here, and I've never seen anything like this or believe in ghosts. I do believe aliens or entities that defy the laws of the universe exist, and I've always been fascinated with space, UFO, aliens, disbanded military projects, etc. As a kid, I would read tons of books on the subject. I also wanted to say I was fully awake and I know what I saw. It was crazy. I even turned the lights on and had a dream, a damn 10-minute conversation with myself. I was literally saying, just remember, you weren't asleep, you weren't tired, you were fully awake. I've only told my girlfriend, and the other day I told my mother for the first time. I think other people will think I'm crazy. She tells me her story of when she was 5. She saw a man made of static or TV snow. I have no choice but to believe her because of my experience. I don't really believe in ghosts. However, I believe that if the universe is so big, that it would be akin to being just a part of an atom that's just part of some mass. Then it would be foolish to think we are the only intelligent life. Anyway, has anyone ever seen anything like this? Surely I can't be the only one. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you have enjoyed tonight's collection of UFO and alien stories. With all the stuff that's coming out lately, to me it seems just a little bit more plausible, although I always have believed there is life out there. Whether or not it's reached our shores, I guess we'll never know for sure. But if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to drop a like or a comment, as you know they are very much appreciated. And hopefully I will see you tomorrow, where I am planning to have some Bigfoot stories. And I would like to give one final thank you to all my members and patrons whose names can be seen on screen now. And if you'd like your birthday shout out, sign up and let me know when your birthday is, where you can pick the topic of your choice. But that's it from me. Stay awesome, and I'll see you tomorrow with my good old friend, Bigfoot. Good night.